Hey guys, it's Lukian, and today I'm going to be talking about my favorite books of 2025. I have a list of 13 books. I wanted to narrow it down to 10, but I just love all of these books. These are all the books that I gave 5 stars in 2025, and I read 110 books, so 13 out of 110. I feel like that's a pretty solid number, and I just want to talk about all of them with you. So I'm going from my number 13 to my number 1, my favorite book of the year. So let's just jump into the video. At number 13, I have The Queen's Rising by Rebecca Ross. This is her debut novel, and it is the first book in a YA fantasy duology, and in this we follow a girl named Brianna who, at the start of the story, is at this boarding school where you can master one of 5 different passions. So there's like knowledge, art, music, etc., and she chooses knowledge, and then something occurs and she becomes embroiled in this sort of uprising for the rightful heir to the throne. And it's a really interesting story in that it kind of has a different spin on the Chosen One trope. The Chosen One is just like a side character in this novel, and Brianna is the narrator, and she's the one helping to get the Chosen One back on the throne. So it's a very interesting perspective, and I just love Rebecca Ross's writing. I love the worlds that she creates, and I think the world in this series is really interesting. I loved the boarding school setting at the beginning. I loved the whole stuff with the Queen's Rising, the titular aspect of the plot, and there was just so many tropes, fantasy tropes in this book that I really, really enjoyed, and I will read pretty much anything Rebecca Ross writes. And I'm also very interested to read the sequel, because this definitely does feel like a standalone, so I think it'll be cool to see where the story picks up and how it continues. Then at number 12, I have Crimson Bound by Rosamund Hodge. This was a huge surprise for me, because this was a book that I really hadn't seen a lot about. I know Rosamund Hodge is a fairly popular author, and her book Cruel Beauty is definitely pretty popular, at least it was when it came out on BookTube, and that was a retelling. I think that was a Beauty and the Beast retelling, if I'm not mistaken, and this is a Little Red Riding Hood retelling, and I'm gonna be so honest, I bought this book because of the cover. I just love it. I love the colors. I thought it was really intriguing, and I was excited to read it when I found out that it was a Little Red Riding Hood retelling, because I've only read one other, and that was Scarlet by Marissa Meyer. And this book takes place in a world that is inspired by medieval France, and it was just such a cool story. I don't want to say too much because the plot is pretty complicated, and it can get convoluted if I were to like explain it now, so I'm not even going to attempt to. But there are these dangerous, deadly creatures, there's a magical forest, there's sword fighting, there are like fables in this story. The world is so cool, and I just loved the way it incorporated the Little Red Riding Hood story. It's not like a direct retelling, it's very much like inspired by that, but I just thought the setting was awesome. I thought it was so beautifully written. I love Rosamund Hodge's prose, and I'm really excited to read another one of her books. I think she did a great job of just like immersing me in this story and really taking me by surprise, and I was fully along for the ride. Number 11 is Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross. This is the sequel to Divine Rivals, which I read the previous year in 2024. And I really, really enjoyed the sequel. Obviously, it's on my favorites list, but this story follows 2 main characters, Iris and Roman, and they are rival journalists at this company in like a fantasy world, and in this world there are these different gods, and it's kind of complicated, but basically they end up sending letters to each other through a magical wardrobe. It's so romantic, it's so whimsical and magical. In this story, we definitely delve a lot more into the mythology of this fantasy world with the different gods, and I really enjoyed that. I thought it was an interesting kind of switch up for this sequel, and I love Rebecca Ross's writing. I think that the romance in the series is so well written. I really adore both of the main characters, and I just thought this was a perfect follow-up to Divine Rivals, which is a book I really enjoyed to start with, but I think the stakes were so high in this book for the characters and for the world, and it was handled beautifully. Okay, we are now moving into the top 10, and my number 10 is Cards on the Table by Agatha Christie. This is an Hercule Poirot novel, and the setup for this mystery is that this kind of flamboyant man, this, like, aristocratic guy, sort of. He ends up inviting Hercule Poirot to this dinner party, and there are other popular detectives from other Agatha Christie novels, like Colonel Race and Ariadne Oliver, and he ends up murdered, and they have to get to the bottom of it. I loved this one. I thought it was so cool following multiple different detectives. Obviously, Poirot is, like, the central detective, but there are, as I said, like, Ariadne Oliver and the other ones. Superintendent Battle returns in this story as well, and I thought the way the mystery unfolded was fascinating because we kind of go through the different detectives and we follow them as they are interviewing different people, and it's a really short Christie. It's like under 250 pages, but like, it flies by, like, even beyond its length, so absolutely loved it, and one of my favorite Christies ever. Speaking of favorite Christies, my number 9 is A Murder is Announced by Agatha Christie. This is easily my favorite Miss Marple novel, and it takes place in this town called Little Paddocks, I believe? No. It takes place in a village called Chipping Cleghorn. The names in these stories all, like, jumble together for me, and basically the setup for this one is that there is a post in the morning newspaper saying that a murder is announced and will take place at Little Paddocks, and lo and behold, people show up because they think it's, like, a fun, like, joke, and a murder does end up happening, and Miss Marple has to get to the bottom of it. Loved this one as well. I thought the characters in this book were particularly interesting, and I think the reveal at the end was so clever, and the like, clues were there to the point where you could, like, solve it, and I began to piece things together, but I think Agatha Christie did a phenomenal job of wrapping it all up, and I think Miss Marple is used perfectly in this book, so definitely a top one for me. We're going to keep the mystery theme going because my number 8 is One of Us is Lying by Karen M. McManus, and this is the second to last book that I read in 2025, so right under the wire, and this follows 4 different main characters, and they are 4 out of 5 people who end up getting in detention, and they are the only 4 to survive. So the one kid named Simon does not survive, and Simon is the kind of creator of this online forum where he reveals different secrets about people in this high school, and so a lot of people probably wanted to take him out, and all 4 main characters have secrets that they don't want getting out, so they become prime suspects. It's great. It's pitched as, like, The Breakfast Club with murder. It's probably the most popular mystery thriller in the YA genre, or in the YA space, and it's amazing. Like, all of the characters are so well written. I loved all of them. I think, I genuinely can't even pick a favorite. Like, maybe if I had to, I would say Cooper, but the rest of them are amazing as well. Nate, Addie, Bronwyn, like, they're just so well written, and their voices are so distinct, and the plot is incredibly propulsive. So if you for some reason have not picked this one up yet, definitely do, because it is very worth the hype. At number 7, I have The Book Thief by Marcus Zuzak. This is another one of the most popular YA books ever, and it is a book that I've had on my TBR forever, and it follows a girl named Liesel in World War II who ends up stealing a book, and her family becomes kind of the safe house for this young Jewish boy, and it is told from the perspective of death. So, incredibly heartbreaking, a very, very touching historical fiction novel. I read so many historical fiction novels. I've read so many historical fiction novels set in World War II, but I think this one is such a fresh take, and there's a reason why it's so popular and why it has stood the test of time. At number 6, I have A Forgery of Fate by Elizabeth Lim. This is a YA fantasy standalone that follows a girl named True who has the ability to paint the future, and she ends up in a kind of arranged marriage with this dragon lord, dragon prince, and she has to go to his underwater kingdom, and there's it's just so good. Like, there's all these different fantasy characters, there's, like, mysteries. She is trying to figure out what happened to her father because he was lost at sea, and it's amazing. Elizabeth Lim is one of my favorite current YA fantasy writers. I think her settings are so evocative and so immersive. I love the way she builds her characters, and I think her plots are so captivating. So another favorite of the year, and another knockout from Elizabeth Lynn. Okay, moving into the top 5, I have The ABC Murders by Agatha Christie. I was on a huge Agatha Christie kick over the summer, and many of her books resulted in favorites, clearly. And this book is another Poirot novel, and we follow kind of a serial killer in this book, and they are... The first murder is for A, for Mrs. Asher in Andover, B is for Betty Barnard in Bexhill, C is for Sir Carmichael Clark in Churston. So the murderer is attacking people in alphabetical order, in towns in alphabetical order, and Poirot has to try to stop them before they get to Z, and it is great. This is narrated by Hastings, and it's a great use of Hastings, a great use of Poirot, and I think it was interesting to see Agatha Christie take on like a serial killer murder, and it was probably one of the most addicting Agatha Christie reads I've ever read. At number 4, I have The Dark Mirror by Samantha Shannon. This is the 5th book in the Bone Season series, and I reread the first 3 books in the Bone Season series earlier this year. Then I read book 4 and then book 5 because it came out in February, I believe, and I loved it. This series follows Paige, who is a clairvoyant, and in this world it takes place in 2059 in Europe, and there's all these different orders of clairvoyance, and they are hunted by like the Scion government. It's very complicated, especially like we're at book 5. I can't really talk about what this installment revolves around, but it takes place primarily in Italy. It was a great setting. I thought the stakes in this book were so well done, and I love the way that Samantha Shannon writes. I mean, her world building is world class, and I think Paige is such a fascinating main character, and this installment is definitely my favorite of the series so far. I think it's just, the series is so well done, and I don't even know what to expect from the 6th and 7th books, but I know it's going to be insane because this book was just like so gripping. I could not stop reading. There are so many amazing plot points in this installment, and yeah, I just can't wait to see how the story continues. At number 3, I have The Bird and the Blade by Megan Bannon, another very surprising favorite for me, and this takes place in the 13th century, or is it the 12th century? I always like, yeah, it's the 13th century. For some reason I thought it was 1180 that it took place, but it's 1280, so the 13th century, and it follows a main character named Jinghua, who's originally from modern-day China, but she ends up kind of working for one of these Mongol princes and his father, and they end up having to traverse across the Mongol Empire because the son, Caliph, is going to try his hand at marriage with Turandot, this princess in modern-day China who will marry someone if he can solve 3 riddles for her. It sounds kind of confusing, but it is so well done. It's 2 timelines, and I loved this book. I thought the setting was incredible. I loved the world. I thought Megan Bannon did an incredible job with this historical setting, and I loved the main character. I loved all the side characters. I just could not stop reading this book. The plot is... it never lets up, and it was a really, really pleasant surprise for me. Okay, now we have my top 2, and this one was tough to choose between, like, which one was number 2 and which one was number 1, but I think I ended up making a good decision. At number 2, I had Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins, the 5th entry in the Hunger Games series, but the 2nd book chronologically. This follows Haymitch Abernathy in the 50th Hunger Games, the 2nd Quarter Quell, and if you know the Hunger Games, you know that the Quarter Quell happens every 25 years, and there is a twist in the original rules of the Hunger Games, and in this in the 50th, the 2nd Quarter Quell, there are twice as many tributes. So, instead of 24, 48, 4 from every district, and we follow Haymitch. And this book, it was amazing. Like, it felt like I was reading the Hunger Games trilogy again. Like I was transported back to those original books because I hated Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, but so I was kind of nervous going into this one, but Suzanne Collins knocked it out of the park. I think this is probably my favorite of the 5. Like, Catching Fire will always hold such a special place in my heart, but I think Sunrise on the Reaping may be like a better book, and I just loved it. I think Haymitch was such a well-written narrator, And the things that happen to him in this book are so tragic, and again, it was just another book that I couldn't stop reading, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it, and I literally don't have a single complaint. Like, it felt like such a Hunger Games book, and it sounds like stupid to say, but a lot of times with spin-offs, it can kind of lose the magic of the original series, but this one kept it. Susan Collins is a genius. And now my favorite book of 2025 was Every Spiral of Fate by Tahereh Mafi. I don't have the book with me because it's downstairs in my room, but I have a full review of this book, and this series is just unmatched. It's one of my favorites of all time. I love Tahereh Mafi, and this was easily the best book in the series so far. So much happens in this installment, like the plot is jam-packed, and I just am in awe of her talent. So yeah, definitely just an incredible story, and I could not put it as my favorite book of the year. It was my favorite reading experience of the year, and I still think about this series like every day, and I need to know what is going to happen. I need the 5th book yesterday. But that is it for this video. I would love to know what books made it onto your favorites list, and I would also love to know if you've read any of these other books and what you thought about them. But that is it for this video. I really hope you all enjoyed. All of my social media links are in the description box below, and I will see you soon for a new video. Bye!